Good morning. Again, my name is Noah Valenstein. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. I'm going to start by introducing the panel and then sort of frame the session we have for this morning. I will warn you, I've had coffee, but not nearly enough. I don't think there's enough in this building to get me to the same level of energy as Tracy Dean or some of the others in this room. The ones who laughed have already clearly know Tracy. But I will do my best to keep you awake and entertained. And first, excited about an amazing panel. I'll start at the far end with Juan. Juan Hernandez, in his role as state conservationist for the USDA NRCS, oversees programs and operations and staff in 33 field offices, 4 area offices, a plant materials center in the state office in Gainesville. Juan grew up in a small coffee plantation in the mountains of Puerto Rico and learned the importance of caring about the land and natural resources. And I will say personally, having worked on many of the climate change issues that USDA is engaged in, his leadership is innovative, it's centered on agriculture and that intersection of agriculture and the environment. It's just been an absolute pleasure to see his leadership here in Florida. Thank you. Next, on the panel is Keith Rowell. Keith is a 7th generation Floridian. I think his family probably half founded the state of Florida, somewhere in there. He's the Lands Program Administrator for the Florida Forest Service, overseeing the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program and Forest Legacy Land Acquisition Programs. He's got over 35 years of professional experience with governmental agencies. He has been a licensed real estate professional for over 30 years and a professional survey and mapper for more than 27 years. Again, you can see Keith's handiwork throughout Florida, and it's amazing to have folks who for generations who've been invested in the protection of Florida, and you can see the passion in their work. The next, and I'll say it's exciting to be able to talk about DOT in a panel. So often we forget about the other agencies who are just as passionate about our natural resources. Jennifer, I've only recently met, but I will say I've heard from more folks over the last day about how exciting and how innovative her leadership is, and that it is absolutely wonderful to hear someone from DOT who's able to stand toe-to-toe with any conservationist in this room and be just as passionate about our natural resources. And so Jennifer is a P and has been the director of the Office of Environmental Management with FDOT since 2021, previously serving as the environmental administrator for District 1. She has over 20 years of experience in the transportation industry and is a graduate of the University of Central Florida with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and is a licensed professional engineer. Next, needing no introduction, Thomas Eason. Thomas Eason has worked as a wildlife biologist and administrator for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. He received his bachelor's in science in forestry and wildlife at Virginia Tech and is our resident expert in the bear population here for the panel. He began his career at FWC as a leader for the bear management section, was the director of the Division of Habitat and Species Conservation for nearly 5 years, and currently is the assistant executive director in 2018. And I will stop looking at my iPad for the secretary. I think I can haze him without looking at that. I will say it is wonderful to have, and I think you see it across this panel, public servants who've really dedicated their life to serving Floridians, working at agencies, and I think the secretary is the perfect example of that, having worked at DEP for more than a decade and have been part of almost every silo within the agency, from regulatory to land conservation. I think for where we are today and the subject that we're talking about today, to have a secretary who's formerly the deputy secretary over land acquisition and state parks puts us in pretty good stead. And I think you can see Shawn's passion for the environment, his openness to all stakeholders, and just about everything he does. And so with that, I just want to mention, I know everyone at the conference, and I apologize for anyone that I've got it back to, has a to-do list, right? I'm sure everyone's got emails coming in on their cell phones. I'll remind you and just want to thank our panelists because they've got a to-do list growing every day that actually covers the entire state of Florida. I think all of our to-do lists end up funneling up to them. So I just wanted to say, A, thank you for your willingness to be in public service. It's no small feat, especially nowadays. And 2, thank you for being willing to set everything else aside and show us how important this issue is to you. So thank you very much. And so I would start with reflecting just briefly for myself. I was thinking back 5 years ago. So who in the room has been involved? I think this is sort of a loaded question, but who's been involved in conservation and natural resource protection here in Florida for more than 5 years by a raise of hands? Yeah, so just think maybe only a couple who haven't. Think back 5 years ago. I mean, I sort of going around yesterday, enjoying the happy hour last night, had these eerie moments where I had to pinch myself and think, 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure there were folks in this room, wondering, are we still gonna have a Florida Forever program? Never mind, the wildlife corridor. I think if I'd asked and done a poll about what do you think we're gonna have for state funding and the availability to do land acquisition, y'all probably wouldn't admit it now, but I bet you half of you would probably say we may get nothing this year, right? That was 5 years ago. And here we are, in the last 2 years, more than $500 million funded just for the wildlife corridor. That's not the rest of Florida Forever, right? I don't think you could walk 10 feet yesterday without running into legislative leadership, elected officials here, and I know many have joined us today, who are passionate about the environment, again, taking their time and energy and putting it into this conference. That's an amazing turnaround in 5 years, I think in large part due to not just the leadership of the governor and the leadership of elected officials like Senate President Simpson and Speaker Sprowls and the other leaders we have in the audience, but to the work of everyone in this room in the wildlife corridor, I think giving us a voice and capturing the story of why this is so important. So I just wanted to personally say thank you to the wildlife corridor and everything everyone has done in this room. So thank you. So with that delay in the start, I will start with the first question, which is sort of building off that and maybe for you, Secretary. But talk to me, what have you seen in the last 5 years? Is that just my rosy sunglasses that I think the world is just amazing and that, or maybe 5 years ago I just had a poor perspective? What do you think has changed?
Secretaries.
Yeah. I should have seen that coming.
I'm sorry, he deserves it because, and the reason is, and again, I'm going to go off script here just for the simple fact, obviously I had a chance to work for and with NOAA, and I don't know if I've seen a more passionate advocate for Florida who's dedicated his life's work to everything that you hear comes out of his mouth. And so I think, just candidly, I think a part of why we're here is because your vision, your leadership, and your commitment to our natural resources. So, and I think I have to give you an applause personally, just because I've seen firsthand. I know you hate it, but I think you do deserve an applause because you've been there on the ground floor of so much of the reason we're here. So thank you.
Thank you. We're going to turn down his mic pretty soon.
No, really, and no, I don't. You're right. I don't have an appreciation for the conservation, focus at the time and the question marks that surrounded conservation efforts through the state. But obviously I was in the regulatory chair at that time, but similar, there were a lot of question marks about our future relevant to just environmental protection in general, right? What those resources would look like. But if you think about now, fast forward and being able to assume a leadership position at the agencies that I'm so passionate about, but yet having the support of the governor, his bold leadership, right? And you mentioned the legislative support that goes around that. Not only does our environmental priorities have remained robust, the land acquisition side has served as, to me, as a unified call, right? Of everybody who's been involved in this process. And so, I mean, I look back and I was kind of there to see, talking with Carlton and talking with the corridor folks, having them come in and talk about their vision and their passion. And again, it was really infectious, but hearing that, and again, I'm gonna call it the ground floor when you talk about folks like Carlton and others who have been doing this their entire life, but to me, to see them come in and start building the framework for the legislation, for the Corridor Act, seeing that process in the making and landing that landmark legislation that is serving as a model for the nation. Again, to me, that was amazing to see. And then seeing, like I said, when the legislature says, hey, here's $100 million for Florida Forever, and most folks, like you said, were like, man, that's good. We're glad to be at that level or whatever. Oh, wait a minute. Here's $300 million for the corridor, to focus on the corridor. And to me, just to have that support, and again, I'll always say, If you follow the money, you will find the policy. In this case, putting the money behind the policy is that commitment what we need, that sustained funding. And so to me, I'm excited about the future because I'm just really in awe of the present, and the commitment. So again, not quite a reflection of the 5 years before, but I can really have a firm appreciation for the now.
Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts on what you've seen in your agency over the last few years? Similar excitement? I mean, I know FWCC has enjoyed the same sort of heyday of focus on the environment. Anyone else?
My quick comments would be you can't reflect on the last 5 years and not think about COVID. I mean, complete lockdown pushed almost all of our staff to their homes, major disruptions and stress out there. And I would just say, along with the money flowing again, having this conference and this summit, the energies here, we're all ripe and ready for this, and just really applaud the corridor for bringing us together.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'll move on again to the first question. We'll see whether we'll attempt to have initial slides, which I'm not sure I can see. Oh, actually, well, we'll go in reverse order then. Juan, you are up. I believe we can guess these are some young Panther cubs. And this is a perfect, oh, thank you. See, again, better secretary. This is a perfect example of what's so right about the wildlife corridor and working landscapes is when you see a video like that of Panther cubs out in the wild, I mean, I think your first guess is state park, National Wildlife Refuge. But Juan, why don't you take it off and talk a little bit about what your program is doing and where this video is.
I will have to talk to my public affairs specialist on that video. Creno, where we took that? That's Kootenai?
No, that's South Slope Control in Henry County.
So you see, I have my helper here. So good morning, and actually, delighted to be here. And I do meetings for living, so I am very well versed into judging, and this is a wonderful meeting. The energy associated with it is incredible. Thank you. I mean, I really feed. We do need meetings like these once in a while. The reality is that I was mentioning to somebody yesterday that sometimes I go to a meeting and I know more at the beginning than at the end. So I have a net loss of knowledge sometimes. And I am telling you that I am so looking forward to have this meeting again. I don't know if they're planning to have one next year, but I'm in. Being a federal employee, magic. Look at these. Look at the panel. I'm actually a threatened endangered species here. I'm the only federal employee. I'm delighted for that opportunity. It speaks volumes of what NRCS have done since conception of easement work, specifically for about 20 years or so. NRCS have been consistently investing into these type of projects and protection. We have invested in Florida well over $750 million in acquisitions. We have secured well over 250,000 acres of protected lands. We have, in fact, we have the largest contiguous easement under NRCS nationwide at the Alapata on the east side of north of Miami. I'm sorry, my geography is a little tricky. But I mean, that is the largest contiguous easement. We have the largest conglomerate of easements as well in the Fish-Eating Creek. That is 37,000 acres or so. Here, even in the room, we have participants, very successful. Carrie Lightsey, you saw them yesterday. Jim Strickland is here as well. I mean, we have active participants that they take part of this land protection. So all that I can say is that we have a very bright future, and I'm very much looking forward to what is ahead.
Thank you. And so we'll see, I don't know if AV can throw up the PDF of pictures. If not, we'll start with, and really the discussion is, with all the funding and all the focus and all the energy in this room, one of the things now that this powerhouse team is faced with is how to get the work done. And part of that's coordination, right? It's amazing that you have an NRCS program working in Florida, but really the key is how everyone works together. And so I don't know, Secretary, if you could maybe start by talking out about a property such as Wolf Creek and explain not just, DEP is clearly the powerhouse of land acquisition in Florida. Division of State Lands led by Callie in the room. do such a good job, but you don't go in it alone, and you certainly don't in managing the lands alone. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and I guess just to kind of, set the stage, what I think, if you look at last cabinet meeting, the board, the trustees approved a little over 16,000 acres within the corridor. That's phenomenal, and that is an amazing accomplishment. However, there's a but, right? But there's only, there's 1.46 million acres of high priority corridor linkages out there still, right? Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, and I hear this all the time, the Florida Forever program is bar none the best in the nation, and I would say in the world, but my scope of reference is fairly small. But with that in mind, to secure those critical linkages, to be able to bring those lands into a conservation fold will require partnerships, period. That's just the only way. As much as I would love to say that one singular program could do it, no, that is not the case. It will take the partnerships, and Wolf Creek's a perfect example. And those partnerships present themselves in a couple of different ways, but of course, one of the most critical is on the funding side, and you hear Juan talk about a lot that we do with the NRCS. But Wolf Creek, I think, is a phased priority acquisition up in the Panhandle, and I love that we're talking about the Panhandle for the simple fact that the corridor is the lifeblood for the entire state, right? It's not just South Florida, it's not Central Florida, it's not just North Florida. It is central to the lifeblood of Florida's complete, I say future of our natural resources, but it's located between the Blackwater River, and I think that's Whiting Field Naval Station up there. But what's important about that, you bought the Trust for Public Lands. I know USDA played a role under the Forest Legacy program, which I know Jim will talk a little bit about. DOD, you had Santa Rosa County, and so now you're 4 or 5 deep in funding partnerships for an acquisition. And if you can imagine the ability for us to be able to get economy of scales of our funding throughout the state with future acquisitions, that is critical. And so, and if you take on our partners who will manage the land, you're talking about 5 or 6 strategic partners that came together to make this a reality. And again, that model, that strategic partnership is going to be crucial, like I said, going forward.
So Keith, I know FDACS was also involved in that. Can you talk a little bit about your partnership and your history with that property?
Yes, so our Forest Legacy program we administer provide funding for some of the most recent acquisitions out there, and I just want to say it's a great group of partners up here on the stage, and that's one specific example of partnership. But I can point to a project within the last 2 or 3 years that each person on this stage has helped provide funding for us to acquire within the corridor. But we appreciate your partnership and look forward to doing much more in the future. We've just received an announcement we've got some more funding for that project, so we'll continue to work in that space.
And so one of the neat things about the wildlife corridor is it sort of has this geographic presence, obviously, in Florida that helps link agencies together. One of the very quintessential items that helps that linkage is the idea of wildlife moving through protected swaths of land. Thomas, do you mind talking about from FWCC's side, coming in and seeing agencies, because you also manage lands, but you do the science on species management, what the wildlife corridor means for FWCC?
Sure. Thanks, Noah. And again, it's hard to get grounded up here, but it's good to see everybody. It's a little awkward, so I'll do my best to look around and project. But I thought a lot about kind of what the corridor brings to Florida, and I think the answer to that question, I need to take a little historical detour. So if folks will bear with me, and I will forget important folks, so don't get hung up on me trying to name everyone. But we heard yesterday multiple times that we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. Florida is an international leader when it comes to this type of work, and we have inspired a lot of folks, and I'm humbled to be in that line of succession and responsibility. So from my perspective, building off of that long history, we have many of the pieces in place, and I'll slowly walk through and then try to pull it all together. Long history of conservation science, conservation planning, going all the way back. The first thing that's directly related to my agency is the Closing the Gaps in Florida's Wildlife Habitat System back in 1994. So my agency has been involved in that, the Florida Natural Areas Inventory, the University of Florida, many people have done just amazing conservation planning, detailed landscape analysis with thousands of hours of population viability analysis to show what is needed in Florida. From my perspective, we have so much, we argue over which one to use, and it's nice that we're kind of settling on the corridor, and because as you heard from TNC and others yesterday, there's 80–90% overlap in all of these things, so no one's arguing about where the core priorities are. It's sometimes our pride gets in the way. And then you fast forward through all of that really good work. We were doing so much science, we were not connecting well with the folks that absolutely matter, which are the private landowners. I mean, the working lands and other landowners, if we're not connecting with them, it doesn't matter how good the science is. And for several decades, we actually were turning them off, and they were looking at our maps and going, no, you're not gonna have my property on there. And it took a lot of stakeholder work that FWC tried to be a big part of. The Cooperative Conservation Blueprint, we worked with a lot of different folks. The Century Commission, if folks remember back 15 years or so, legislatively mandated to look at many things, one of which is the natural foundation of our state. And through bringing all of that together around what we call the Cooperative Conservation Blueprint, we've built that foundation collectively, all of us, with the private landowners, much better relationships with almost all landowners now, much less of the big governments here, and we're going to tell you what to do. And I'm really pleased that we appear to have flipped that dynamic of, somehow a large landowner who's providing all of these public services should not be rewarded, and somehow, we have to punish them for doing all of that, but moved way away from that. And then have massive delivery. I mean, DEP is the core delivery system for land acquisition in Florida. We also have many land management agencies, lots of private landowners and counties and others doing excellent land management. So we have the conservation planning and science, we have the management, we have built the stakeholder connections, and to me, what we collectively have lacked that the corridor is bringing in spades is the connection to the average person in Florida and beyond. It's the storytelling that we heard about yesterday, and it's my words, connecting with the hearts of people. And that's where our agencies that have been very science-oriented, we've just flat out failed. We have not done that very well. And so the corridor has brought that element together, as well as, starting last year, broken through the political situation and gotten corridor thinking back in the mainstream of our political system, which are two humongous positives and needed, and I applaud all of that. So to tie all that up, I know I'm being long, I'm working on an analogy. If the Florida Wildlife Corridor is like a body, we have the mind, we have the science, we have the conservation planning, we have the body, which is the private landowners and managers who are managing the property. We have the arms and legs, which is the DEP and the other agencies doing a lot of the delivery. And then we now have the heart, which is the corridor. And to more fully answer your question and kind of left over from yesterday, to me what's missing is we need the unified vision and will to work together so that we can all overcome our individual differences, which are legitimate, but to transcend that and achieve a greater, higher purpose. And that's what gets me excited. I've got goosebumps talking about it, and I'm really excited that the corridor is helping bring all that together.
Perfect. And actually, to me, that leads right into the idea that, again, bringing everyone together and having a shared vision and collaboration that is focused on conserving lands that can bring agencies together. I don't think there's any better example that, again, we have DOT on stage with us, and you look at everything that Department of Transportation does well, right? You are an agency that is focused on how to join Floridians together, right? Corridors through Florida, a different type of corridor, but you have the mind and you have the thought process for how do we look at infrastructure in Florida and make sure that it's creating the vision of a future for Florida that we want. Talk to us a little bit about the other side of the agency and how you intersect with natural resources.
So I started at the department in 1997 as a fresh-faced 18-year-old designing roads. And I'll tell you, at that time, we're going bigger and faster, and maybe sometimes there's sidewalks, and definitely some traffic signals. That was, and also we were designing in metric, so that kind of tells you we're a little backward anyway. But
Or forward.
that, oh, true, very true. If you're, oh, never mind. Fast forward now, I've had the opportunity to be in the industry for over 20 years here in Florida, and it is my pleasure to see that that is no longer the mindset. It is no longer the mindset, how big can we go, how fast can we go? And I do recognize that our transportation facilities are polarizing. I respect anyone's opinion regarding that. I 100% do, because it's that dialogue that helps us to be better. But I can tell you that through legislation, through support of our executive leadership, we have started to shift our battleship to have a much more holistic focus on our transportation facilities. Even when we're looking at mobility and how we're integrating modes of transportation other than cars, we're looking at, can we take cars off the road? Can we get smaller typical sections? Can we slow down traffic? Can we make it safer? And then we look at how we interact with the natural environment. When I first started this position last year, one of my first tasks was to meet with the wildlife corridor folks and to meet with DEP folks. I did not know what I was going to be talking to them about. So the first thing we talked about was wildlife crossings. I come from District 1, which is Southwest Florida. Brent Setchell is an amazing advocate for natural environment down there. Brent's here today, I just had to throw him a shout out. And so I was very well versed and well trained by him in wildlife crossings. And they said, Jennifer, it goes beyond wildlife crossings. What about mitigation? What about water quality? What about, and the list kept going on. I took a step back. What about it? What about these other things? How can we better partner? It isn't just about a wildlife crossing or a shelf. It's so much more than that. And that's when we started to partner to put together some of the tools that FDOT is developing with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWC, in conjunction with FDEP, some of our other partners, to make sure that we can make these tools available to our team when they're developing projects. Two of the things that we did right away was we made sure that Florida Greenways layer was in our environmental screening tool as well as the wildlife corridor. I'm going to be very honest, we are still doing that internal marketing so that we can get it out to everyone that's involved in planning, but that's a start. I always say, what's that short game? And actually Mallory Carlton and the folks from DEP, whenever we have a meeting, I'm like, okay, what is this one action item we can do like right now that's a success? And then we know that we have the long game. And so that's where we begin. When we have polarizing projects, and we do, you all mentioned some yesterday. Don't hold it against me. I worked on the Heartland Parkway. And I just want to say a thing about that in a minute. But again, another fresh-faced engineer moment for me. But I know we have some polarizing projects, but I think it's great that we have the opportunity to talk and we have the environment and the climate where we can shift. Maybe the improvement doesn't go away. Can it be better suited to the community that it is in from a social standpoint and a natural standpoint? Because that's the values of the community as well as what could potentially be an enhancement or at least support the efforts in the area. And that's what I learned from my time on the Heartland Parkway project team. It was one of the first big major projects that I ever worked on. And I just learned that there is an opportunity for different decision making. You just gotta be willing to go there. Now, when you're at the bottom of the rung, you don't get a whole lot of voice. I've luckily moved up the rung a little bit, and I can use some of that experience to start helping to shape our decision making. What I'd like to encourage today from a partnership standpoint is to just keep talking to us. Because as with what I said about talking with DEP and Mallory and Carlton, it's, but what about this, Jennifer? But what about this? And it just helps keep that going. And then we can think outside of our box. Even linear thinkers, there's hope for us. We can think outside of our box and keep moving forward.
Oh, I love the engineer joke. So just hearing that gets me just as excited as, again, thinking about how much progress we've had over the last 5 years. And you've sort of heard the Secretary talk about, you know, the traditional powerhouse of land acquisition, You've heard the FWCC perspective of what it means for species management, and give us a path forward, give us something that we can rally around from DOT's perspective of, we recognize we play a role in infrastructure, and actually, I think, for the first time I can remember, really so publicly acknowledging our land acquisition programs about infrastructure in Florida too. Our natural lands are an important part of infrastructure in Florida. And I think everyone, though, touched on a key part to sustaining that's agriculture, right? Our open working lands, their viability is really going to be key to having success here in Florida. I always talk about if you have an agricultural operation and that family and that business can envision themselves still in agriculture 100 years from now in Florida, we've won, right? We will be successful. And so, Juan, your background, both in your position, your childhood, Keith too, talk to me a little bit about the importance of agriculture, some of the programs you're working on to make sure we can have just that if you're in agriculture today, you're a farmer here in Florida, that you don't have to think about, can you still be in agriculture 5 years from now?
Yeah, actually, as an agency, all our programs are intended to be privately owned lands, which is something that some people don't quite understand, or because we're about the only agency that does what many of these land management agencies like BLM and BOR, even Forest Service, they're public lands. We do what they do, all combined into a single agency for privately land owners. What is actually even interesting is that if I have an agreement to work with a DOT base, and they want to know their soils and whatnot, we can do that, but I have to charge them for it. Because I am required to work with privately owned lands, not in public lands. And that is all the investments that we have done in the state of Florida, actually, has been, I almost say Maine, 11 years, just bear with me. But the state of Florida have taken advantage of all of these programs quite successfully, some of them, and not so successful some others. The reality is that we have underutilized programs in the state of Florida that we have not taken advantage of. The Conservation and Stewardship Program. It's a great example. Our CPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. In fact, only 5 land trusts in the state of Florida has put in for that program. So that speaks volumes of opportunities, and there are millions available nationwide for applications. And like I said, we have had 5 successful land trusts applying for that program. We have other programs that are not even, in fact, the PL 566, and I was mentioning that to the DOT from Bartow office as well. I was amused that is Area 1. Seldom you hear people starting from the bottom up, but I mentioned that to him, Area 1 in Bartow. What is number 2? But anyways, I was Homestead. So, but no, but they are programs that, like this particular one, I'm really, really excited about it. It presents a lot of opportunities that we have not a single application we have had in the Southeast. Kentucky and Florida are the only states that have not put in an application. And for that program, and I wanted to read you a few of the things that we can do: flood prevention, watershed protection, public recreation, public fish and wildlife, agricultural water management. I can go on into some of the potential benefits of this program. And that's what I'm really, really encouraging decision makers, sponsors, to actually just come together. And not only with NRCS, I do have a bigger, actually like homework, like Noah was saying. I know I'm giving you a homework, actually, for a change. It will be actually to explore federal options. I think that we should have a brainstorm session with decision makers on the federal family. It's like, listen, and I know that has not taken place because there are programs that I have that you don't know about it. So it's not like, oh, we have done that. Like, no, you haven't. I know that. Because if you would have known about these programs. The same goes true to any other agencies that we have in the room that we can actually collect and see, like, what do you have? What do you know that is coming? What is on the pike that it can help us? And the reality is that putting all this effort into a concentrated area is what it will get us that traction. This area is enormous in scope. If we try trying to do random act of conservation the whole way from Pensacola to Homestead, it will be everywhere. But if we take this laser beam into this is a hot area, who can play here? What do we have? That's what I see is the key of success to bump this significant effort. I'm not criticizing what you have done. It's absolutely outstanding. It is remarkable. Even the scope and the plan, mind-boggling. I mean, I'd love to be part of that. But I think that we need to start concentrating in these areas to see what resources are, and then move to the next, And I think that is going to make that significant difference. And the time is now. You know how the market is looking. You know how everything around us. If we don't take advantage of this now, some of these parcels can be gone forever.
Thank you. Keith, so talk to me a little bit about, so we've got the opportunity, right? And I think Thomas mentioned on it, there's been sort of this history of how do you work with working lands and make sure that it's actually viewed as our role is to support the success of that industry, right? Not to end it, not to regulate it, not to create a barrier, but actually to help make sure that land use can continue. And obviously, Florida agriculture, your office is a big part of promoting agriculture, supporting it. Talk to me a little bit about how you work with farmers to sell this.
Yes, and I've already talked about our agency partners up here and can point to specific projects you've all helped us with, but we've got to remember who the most important partner, especially on the conservation easement side, is, and it is the working landowner. Yeah. When they enter into an agreement with us, they're entering into an agreement in perpetuity. So we've got to go in and, the goal of our program is to ensure that we have sustainable working lands, and that's not just sustainable from the agricultural and timberland operations standpoint. They've got to be sustainable fiscally. Yeah, and if we see, I think someone mentioned yesterday that the value of the land may be outpacing the value of the use it's being used for, so we've got to be sure that through our program, in partnership with you all, and hopefully maybe through some payment for ecosystem services, I know, Thomas, you all have talked about that we can continue to protect more and more lands within the corridor, because we know they're key. There's some really key parcels in really key areas, and we're hopeful for the future. We've relied on partner funding a great deal in the past through lean times. Hopefully in the future we'll have more to attack this in bigger bites. But we appreciate the partnership, and we're hopeful for the future.
Perfect. So I don't know. No, I figure if someone's giving me a hook, it'll be a little more aggressive. That not enough to get us off the stage, so we'll be good.
She was looking for hard, really hard. I could tell. She was everywhere.
But I'm glad you're about to jump in, because I think that notion of, right, the fact that you have an agency recognizing, DACS, hey, we can't go it alone, right? It's all about layering, and how could you work with an NRCS program and layer it on the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Service program, and then on to FWCC. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure, and I appreciate Keith getting that concept out there. From my perspective, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. We want to make agriculture successful because working lands are providing amazing parts of the corridor that are fully functional right now. And that's what we want to keep. So the threat is development. We saw a lot about that yesterday. And so people like myself and others have been working hard. Instead of viewing these large landowners as mega wealthy people, they're land rich and they're money poor. I mean, a lot of them are barely making it on a day-to-day basis. And the more we can, as a society, as public, reimburse them for the services, the ecosystem services that Keith mentioned, as one layer of many, the longer we're going to keep working lands working, and fully support that, and it needs to be well thought out. But the idea of a landowner making money on their land, I'm double thumbs up. Yes, they need to. They need to make money to keep doing it, and it's a lot more expensive for the state to try to buy it and manage it ourselves than to allow good stewards to keep doing that work. And then if I could, I just wanted to build on, Keith also mentioned the landowner is the key ingredient. We have lots of technical solutions to a huge problem, and they're needed, when you get down to it, it's an adaptive challenge. It's a person challenge. We have to figure out how to connect with all the right people in the corridor to figure out how to come together to find the solution. It's not here, we have the solution for you. It's we need to engage with the landowners, hear what's on their minds, and engage with them at the heart level. And then I think things will flow naturally from there.
No, I wanted to jump in real quick into a particular program that NRCS has, this Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And that is a program that on its core is marrying production and conservation as a common goal. That's the particular mission of that program. And we invest $30 million a year in that program in Florida alone, into marrying conservation and production on a day-to-day practice. And we have, once again, folks in this room that they have taken advantage of that program. It is very, but that speaks of what producers are actually, how committed they are. And the demand for the program is still strong. So that is actually the level of how you measure the commitment to the land that they have. That is not only the permanent protection, but it's the improvements, the enhancements to this. Because one thing is protecting it, something else is the enhancement associated to actually have suitable habitat for these wildlife to actually take advantage and use of that property, not only access.
Perfect. And Secretary, I saw you nodding along.
No, I was just, I mean, honestly, I'm personally excited to hear, just the other panelists talk about the various programs and you heard Dr. Eason talk about, the urgency of now, right? And the ability to make sure we move quickly. But with any of these programs, and again, no offense to any of my partners here and no offense to anybody who's in the conservation business, whatever, we've got to have a strategic synergy to bring these to bear timely and quickly and efficiently. I'll take it. And again, I'm probably maybe in Callie DeHaven, our Director of State Lands is here, who is the hard blood of our State Lands program, and she can appreciate this when I make this comment. I'm about the most healthy, impatient person that you'll find, right? I want to. And again, in a healthy way, right? I want us to do more now, right, for our land conservation. But I want to see these programs, the coordination, that what we're talking, adapt to the urgency of now. Mm-hmm. Again, we are bureaucrats. We tend to, don't have that sense of urgency because we have processes, we have sign-offs or whatever. But they need to adapt to now, because what I mean by that, we have projects that have market pressures, and I know you guys talked about that, are coming at a bunch of different angles. They're looking at a different process, right? They have a different money incentive. And trust me, they're not gonna let time go by without bringing those offers on the table, creating that competition that we are dynamically trying to go against. And the only reason I mention that is that we've got to continue to work together with you as partners, but also as agencies, to be prepared, to put ourselves in the best position to be competitive in that market. And so I'm excited about all the programs, but I'm more anxious about us being able to put ourselves in a position to use those as good resources.
What a wonderful comment. I'll add to Carrie's clap for that, because I think everyone is excited to see the agency move forward. So I think that's the perfect segue. So we've talked about, the excitement that we've had over the last 5 years, where we stand today at this conference, the fact that we're having this conference, the fact that we opened up with a video about PLAM, which is a conference the state didn't have for years and years. Again, look back 5 years ago, neither of these would be happening. You've heard from the panelists how well, I think, now from an outside perspective, I think the agencies are working together. It seems like there's better coordination than ever before. And so, to the Secretary's point, I think that sort of leads us to, and you hear this across the board right now, it feels like we're in this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, in part because of the support we have from this governor for the environment, this legislature, again, mentioning the number of elected officials we have in the room in a conference like this. That's special, that's unique. It certainly isn't something I think you see every single year, maybe even only once a generation. You look at the federal funding opportunities we have, right? I mean, you look at Climate Smart Ag, with the ability to have $100 million applications, more than $1 billion for a program like that. It just seems like we're at this precipice. And so thoughts on how do we take the work that everyone here has done, the coordination and sort of the foundation that you've laid out, and seize that and move forward? Thoughts for the future? Tom?
I always have
Yeah.
thoughts. My
Yeah.
staff will attest to
I will
that.
rely on you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, keeping it simple, many of us have said, and I feel strongly for a long time now, we need, and it was mentioned yesterday, I think by Ron, we need a Kennedy-like statement of what the objective is. And the best I've heard was from Ron yesterday. He said we need 1 million acres, within 10 years or 9 years, and that's 10,000 acres a month. We could get down to 10,000 priority acres, but I think we need that, land someone on the moon and bring them back safely by the end of the decade. We need that to help all of us get in gear and figure out how to get urgency out there. And then I would also add with that, part of that to me is we're not going to buy 1 million acres in 9 years. I think acquisition, fee simple will be an important integral part. We need to move easements, and we need to move into payment for ecosystem services, shorter term easements, to be able to get lands conserved at least for a set amount of time, and move the monies and be able to move on to bigger order things. And so I think we need to both be innovative, but what we really need is we need the statement, ideally from the governor or someone, saying we're going to do this, and then we have the means. We just don't have the will right now, the unified will to get it done.
Perfect. Other thoughts, federal side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I jumped and I answered that question in my last one. But be as it may, I mean, we do have opportunities with the federal family that I think that has not been explored. We have absolutely nothing to lose. Let's throw paint at the wall to see what we may see. I mean, that's what we need to do, really. I mean, I think that some of these programs, and now, for the record, I'm not saying that they're the easiest thing to apply for. It's like Juan said, I'm like, no. I'm saying it's there. And some of them are a little tricky here or there, but I have witnesses in this room that have participated in these programs, and we have helped them to navigate through the murky waters of what that means and what I feel is blank and what not. And they have been successful. And that's what I feel we're here for. Reality, it is my ulterior motive to actually bring as many national resources to the state of Florida. My success is your success. But I need you to be an active sponsor, an applicant. I can have all the opportunities in front of me, but if I don't have somebody willing to come in, it's just looking at me and smiling at me because there's nothing that I can do about it. So, I mean, I can speak of the programs, and that's what I'm hoping to encourage. At least one. Come on, DOT. I'm putting them on the spot, that's wrong. But I mean, for the wildlife crossings, I think that is a match made in heaven for us to come together and see how would that potentially would look like. And RCPP, that's another Regional Conservation Partnership Program. That is a program that is well underutilized. This year, I think that the commission might be, I know that it's a few commission, and I'm looking at maybe 3 applicants, maybe 2 or 3 at best. So the reality is that we have opportunities. And listen, even if you don't know if it works, just call me. I mean, it's like, hey, Juan, this is what I'm thinking. And I will tell you, yeah, or that's not even close. And that's fine. Now you know, I know, and we move on to the next thing. But do not make the assumption that, oh, that's too big, too complex, that's not for me, that does not fit my operation or my idea. So believe me, NRCS is very diverse into so many things that we do. We just need to come in and become an applicant. And just 352-647-6025.
We will make sure to put that up on the screen.
Big numbers.
That's my cell phone.
Some of the slides we missed, we'll just replace with Juan's
And
cell
it's not a
phone.
1-800, it's the real one. Yeah.
So I'll mention, and again, thank you for pointing out, obviously there's always also the opportunity to make tweaks. We have a farm bill coming up.
Yes.
If there are other ways to improve, to expedite, to take
In fact,
the
I just
secretary.
heard something really cool. I heard that they are on the planning to propose an easement type, like agricultural land easement protection for forest land. It will mimic the rules of the agricultural land easement, but it will be intended only for forest land.
And silviculture is agriculture, so that's a good.
That's actually quite neat. I don't know how is that going to pan out, but that is already that speaks that there's already conversations for the new upcoming farm bill.
So hopefully we've got an opportunity, with all the groups in the room, if there are tweaks, we've got opportunities to do that. So as we sort of head towards closing, and Thomas, I think you actually mentioned this, was how do we wave the banner for the wildlife corridor, right? Again, looking back, remember times when we wouldn't have had everyone here in this room, where I think if we had polled the audience, there would have been frustration and hope, but we hadn't quite figured out how to get there. We're here, right? I think we've got more success than we ever would have envisioned only a few years ago. How do we move forward? Well, how do we help? How do each of us on stage and in the audience, how do we carry the banner and help move forward?
I'll jump in with a short version of an answer, which it begs a lot of thought. I think, I stated that there are multiple layers of adaptive challenges, and ultimately it comes down to humans. And I can't remember who said it, but humans are incredibly stubborn. I think it was the guy on the video yesterday. We need to come together with the right sets of our thought leaders from all of these different efforts, the body of the corridor that I talked about, and get them together, let them mesh and meld, and I think we can do all sorts of amazing things. I think right now we're not ready to run. We still, with the body's doesn't have that common will and vision, and it's going to be hard to achieve what we want. So there's some adaptive human work to do. I think it can happen pretty quickly, and I'm happy to have FWC be a part of whatever that might be. But that's my honest assessment of how to launch this and get there quicker.
Jennifer?
I think that I'm going to use something that's kind of tired to say, but early coordination, and then I'm going to expand on that. I think we got to start making considerations a part of how we do business, not, oh, by the way, we should also include this in business. So going back to that early coordination, how can we make it a part of our processes? And speaking specifically for my agency, is what is that meaningful early coordination, and what does it mean? Does it mean looking at our 5-year work program and saying, we have an opportunity to purchase conservation lands. This project is coming through. Can this project support the purchase of this conservation land? And can we look at the water quality in this area? And can we look at a potential wildlife crossing? And by the way, mitigation opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then we're taking a much more holistic approach to something that we know is gonna happen through our program that could branch off with our other partners, be it the Army Corps, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWC, FDEP. That's a shift in conversation, and that's making that early coordination meaningful. And I would like to say to that point, yesterday there was a lot of talk about education and a lot of talk about technology, and we're working on things like that. We've been working on that. One of the administrators from my office, Katasha Cornwell, is gonna speak about some of the things that we've been working on this afternoon. I encourage you all to take a look at what she has. Give us feedback on how we could expand, how we could use this better. I just want to go back to what I said earlier. Having that early conversation where people said, Jennifer, but what about this? Just expands our view beyond what we're typically doing to help us make those more holistic decisions. Then we're not being reactionary when a project comes through. We're all starting from the beginning in a process that's an improved process.
Leave it to DOT to be the future of land conservation
like
in
it.
Florida.
I
This
like
is
it.
good. Juan?
Something that I wanted to add is that, and we all have heard this figure very often, the 1,000 people moving in every day. So that speaks again of the communication importance. All of you, of course, are here because you know about this, and you care, and you know, and you are involved with it. But the reality is that the 1,000 people that move today, they don't. They really don't. So that the fact that you have gained momentum and a lot of these room and a lot of these players are on board, you cannot let go of the gas pedal on the communication side of the house as well. Because these will only be as good as public support. And that is a true federal, local, county, your neighbor. That is that constant communication that this is important, this is what this is about, so that as people move in, they are part of the solution. Because if you don't communicate, you allow them to decide what it is and what is not. And they can land on the wrong side of the equation very quickly. So maintaining that education, what is this about? What is this important? Why we need to do it? Even if it's repetitive, it's not. Think about it. Tomorrow is 1,000 people new coming in that they don't know about it. So please go on with your message. Excellent, excellent job.
Great point. Secretary, any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I couldn't agree with Juan more on that. Is that you think about it, there's been an amazing commitment in the Florida Forever program, the conservation conversation, and everything from our elected leaders who are here, our governor, whatever. But with that's coming a pretty high level of expectation, right? And we've got to honor those expectations, not just for them, but the generations who are entrusting us to leave our natural resources in a better position. So to Juan's point, that does require us to take a hold of this passion that you see in this room that the corridor has created and take it to the next level and just hold on it tight. And I love the conversations I've had last night, just to her point about, hey, what about this? What about this? I would just challenge us as agencies to also do that, to have that passion between our organizations and our efforts to further the corridor effort. But again, the challenge also, like Juan's done, challenge you guys to also hold us accountable. Look for opportunities that we can do better and let us know where those opportunities lie. So again, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to end with, again, thanking each of you. I know you've got now another 100 emails piled up away from family, away from office, and have chosen to be here with us. And that just speaks the world for each of your agencies' commitment to the wildlife corridor and commitment to the future of Florida. So thank you for that. We'll either have an explosion in 18 seconds or possibly, if adult supervision allows questions and answers, we will move to that. Perfect. All right.
This is when it gets interesting.
And we'll make sure any hard questions go to me, other questions to the panelists.
This is when it gets interesting.
Thank you all. Meredith Budd with the Florida Wildlife Federation. I hear a lot about public support and getting the message out to the layperson and garnering the support from people that are moving to this state that might not have the appreciation for our natural landscapes. And so I wanted to ask, well, let's reference in COVID, I was just speaking here with everyone who is nearby me about how in COVID, when we had lockdowns, there was this greater appreciation for the outdoors and people were recreating outside more, and because that was where they could go. And so we saw an uptick in foot traffic at all of our local preserves, our state parks that were in our area, I'm sure as everyone did across the state. So I'm just curious if there's anything that you all think that the agencies could do to maybe incentivize or make it more accessible, for lack of a better term, for the public to understand and value our public lands, our natural resources, to garner that support to the layperson, to bring people outside, and not necessarily in a situation where we have a pandemic or a tragedy. People tend to gravitate towards these issues when it's right in front of them and there's a tragedy or something like a pandemic happening. How can we do that on the everyday without something, a big cloud over us like the pandemic, and get people to appreciate so that that layperson and the people moving here really do want to continue to support these programs?
Great question. And certainly you saw it. I remember talking with Eric about boats on the water in Miami and just the lines of folks who otherwise wouldn't have been out. So I don't know, Secretary or Dr. Eason, you want to?
I'll take a first pass and turn it over to Dr. Eason. But I see Garrett Draper here, who former director of the Park Service, and that was something that we used to have almost daily conversations when I was in that shop about the continuous value of interpretation and the connection of the everyday visitor who's coming out to recreate in those resources. And again, I get it, I take it, you come out and you want to enjoy the sun, you want to walk, but I can tell you 9 out of 10 visitors, there's a unique opportunity there just for a split second to connect them to the broader understanding of those conservation lands. If it's only for a second, it is a seed that will grow. And so it's a conscious effort. I talked with Carlton, and if you've ever been in a meeting with Carlton Ward, he is about as passionate of the corridor as far as thinking about ideas and ways to connect folks. Well, we can put wildlife corridor signs here on the interstate, but he's exactly right. How do you continue to build? We need to be thoughtful in building those connections. And so we've already started those conversations. And it's not, they're not here because of the nature of this panel, But I've had discussions with the Department of Health. How do you build their connection to the healthy side of this and encourage their participation in their programmatic areas and build a sustained program that even without the cloud, you draw people to what they found to be therapeutic and beneficial and continue that process without the cloud as you described it. And Dr. Eason, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
This is my boss Eric also likes to say, "What's the easy question that's really hard to answer?" I mean, this is a challenge. I mean, all of our agencies have worked for decades on trying to connect. We're not connecting at the scale and the depth that we want. A personal anecdote or thought is, we need to do more than educate. I mean, education is necessary but not sufficient. We need to connect and we need to engage. And I always come back to children. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I mean, whatever she's doing, I'm doing, and that is a good connection. I think there's a ripe opportunity for private sector NGO folks to step up and help engage with us to figure out how to do it better. I mean, we're ready, willing, we just don't know how, and so that's my not so awesome answer, but I agree with you wholeheartedly, and we're struggling to figure out how to do it. Another thought, at least for wildlife management areas, most of our areas tend to be remote. Obviously, hunting, fishing, key uses of those properties. We've talked for decades about trying to have like gateways, smaller WMAs that are closer into populated areas. And I know that's been done here and there, but I think it's going to take a significant effort to try to achieve what you're talking about.
And I'll compliment, obviously, all the agencies here, but especially DEP and FWCC and the water management districts. I know we've got some executive directors here in the room. I think everyone remembers that point in the pandemic when we're like, all right, so 1 week and we're done, right? We're back to normal in a week. I'll lock away for a little bit and then we're done, right? Sort of what a laughable thing to look back at now. I think everyone recognizes there's no going back. There's just what is the new, right? It's changed so much of how we operate from Zoom meetings being normal, and I think we'll get a lot of benefit from that. And so what I certainly have seen both agencies do a tremendous job at is operate at enormous speed, sort of business improvement. How do we make the park experience better? Can we go to digital entrance? Can we make it easier for folks to engage? In part, responding to that enormous influx of visitors, and it's not going to go back to something different, right? It's actually going to be a new, improved experience. And I think both agencies have done a great job looking to adapt and looking to sort of in a very short period create a new, improved experience coming from that. So,
No, she has a question.
I comment, and more than a question, this is the best panel I've heard in a long time. I appreciate everybody's openness. I feel like when P2000 was about to sunset and we all thought it was going away, and we had this energizing conference that actually tweaked the program a little bit, got everybody on board. So there are so many people that aren't here today. You know, I hope, and I might put this in the form of a question. I love Thomas, I love your idea of having to roll up your sleeves, get the people together and really dig deeper into this. So what other ways, I mean, if this panel's being recorded, which I think it is, it needs to be like blown out to the entire, you know, all the partners in the state. But other ideas for next steps. I know November, you've got your conference, but let's not wait till November. So any ways you think we can start moving this forward?
Margaret, great, perfect energy to say, again, I think the secretary had the comment of, you know, impatience. What can we do now? What more can we have? Again, I would say that, you know, November may be a little bit off, but the fact that we're having a plan and the fact that the secretary's committed to continuing that tradition is a pretty good next step. But any other thoughts?
Some concrete thoughts. In addition to PLAM, my agency, again, it's not going to answer your immediate question, but after that, early 2023, we're planning on having another summit. So I like the idea of we all build off of each other as we move forward. In the interim, one of my agency's 3 agency strategic level initiatives is what we call landscape conservation. So a little bit of a plug here. You know, our theme is connect. You have to connect first, collaborate, conserve. We have a team working on that. We're going to focus on Southwest Florida. So a specific idea would be to use Southwest Florida where there's a ton of information, a lot of people ready to go. Find the right people. Let's not wait till PLAM. Maybe we use PLAM as a key check-in. And I'm happy to get our staff just organizing meetings, even if it's virtual, ideally be in person. But we just need to get that done. And so hopefully I can connect with a few other leaders and we'll figure out how to make that happen. But I really appreciate your question. We need to take advantage of the opportunity and feel the urgency. And it's too easy. I can blink and it's like 3 months go by and I'm like, oh, I had this conversation. Have we done anything? So, but the good news is for us, we have a team. It's on our radar screen. It's one of our agency's highest priorities. And we can help be a backbone if that's helpful for others.
And I'll mention one of the neat things about having, again, legislators in attendance and sort of having enjoyed such a strong legislative support, again, from the speaker and the president and of course the governor, is when you've got the legislature and governor interested in something, it's amazing how easily it happens, right? And certainly there are numerous check-ins for both of those entities as we go through the year to make sure that we keep the pressure up and make sure we're achieving good for Florida. Sorry.
It's one sentence, I promise. It would be the corridor committee. I am volunteering basically to help glue a federal roundtable. So I will be the first one in the meeting, so you can count on me already being there. And so it's one less that you need to worry about. But I will be around. So to 1 or 2 o'clock. So if somebody can raise and approach me, it's like, hey, Juan, I want to be part of this group. And let's gather these interested federal agencies with some kind of a ability to assist and see what they have and what is it that we need to do to take advantage of those programs that maybe we don't even know about it. So that is my commitment to help.
Juan, I see Tracy nodding her head in the back, so you don't even know what you are in for.
Okay. Game on, girl. So
I'm pretty sure your offer has been accepted.
And I would just add a quick plug for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, another key partner with significant resources flowing at the national level. So I love that idea.
Yeah, we have actually folks here from U.S. Fish and Wildlife as well in the room. So absolutely.
Everyone hang on because you will get your invite.
Hi, my name is Amber Crooks. I'm with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. And I walked up here to kind of lend support to exactly what you're saying before you were involved in deeply discussing this plan, because we have the data. Thomas said something earlier in the panel as well. We have a lot of data. Speaking with knowledge of the Panther Recovery Implementation Team, Transportation Sub-Team, the longest title ever. There's a lot of reports available that show where those last permeable areas along I-4, a major barrier for bears and panthers, as well as the hotspots for mortality in Southwest Florida. And so I just wanted to kind of give support to what Thomas had said, at the beginning of the session, and now that you're discussing that the data is available. And really, I think now it comes down to the brass tacks of putting all the data before you and determining where those priorities are, because there are some key parcels that if we were able to acquire, we'd be able to put in the crossings that are desperately needed for panthers. So I just wanted to offer that information's available.
Perfect.
I'm in shout out mode. For folks who don't know, DOT is amazing. I mean, I can't, I've lost track, 36 panther crossings or so in South Florida, lots of crossings that I've been involved with. But above and beyond that, I heard you mention it, efficient transportation decision making, all of the CLIP data, all of the data that helped create the corridor is embedded in the 5 and 10 year planning that the DOT does. So you don't always get the love. I'm giving you some love. You all are an amazing partner. And the good news is when you all do a project, it's at scale and we have opportunities to really tackle big things when there's a major corridor going through. So as well as impacts, there's also opportunities, and I appreciate what y'all do.
Thank you. And thank you, Amber. I have a moment to say thank you for her speaking up. That's exactly some of the information that I'm talking about that's becoming available to us now, that it's going to become incorporated into our processes. And we're going to continue to add and refine, and then our decision making just will naturally become better.
No, he has a question in the corner.
Sorry.
I think we'll go with wherever is managing microphones. Do we want to do microphones, or are we almost out of time? So we will circle up and for a break, or else I will get the real hook. So with that, thank you very much to the panel. I can't tell you, I mean, what a tremendous conference. I think last round of applause, not only for the panelists, but for the Wildlife Corridor Foundation for hosting this event and making it a success. Thank you so much.